Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Season Ticket Holders. I'm your host, Dane Lillingston, and we have a favourite returning guest back with us today. He is the sports lead at the Australian Radio Network. He's a former UQ alum and classmate of mine, an award-winning radio journalist and Melbourne Storm tragic. I've got the tissues ready. Harrison Priebe, welcome back to the show. How are you, mate?
Thank you, Dane. It's always an honour, and I've seen you have the A-listers on in recent weeks. Loving the show and the NRL content. It's always great fun. Doing a great job.
Good.
But it's good to be back.
Very good. Glad to have you back, mate. And it's very, very good to hear from you, Harrison. Obviously, we're here to talk about the Melbourne Storm, mate. I don't think I can remember a time like this. I'm looking at the ladder right now, down in 16th, second last, alone on 4 points. Only the Dragons are saving you guys from being at the bottom at the moment. I know you can't believe it. I'm a Bronco fan. You're a Melbourne fan. We watched the grand final only last year. The fall from grace. I know we saw it with the Penrith Panthers last year, and they were even further down the line last. We've seen it happen before, but right now, based on what we're watching, you'd have to think it's a long shot. Mate, how did we get here?
It's taking a fair bit of adjustment. I'm not used to, being so low on the table. I'm used to the great heights, top four, top of the table every season. I think the last time we were that low was 2010, which was the salary cap year, which we don't speak about anymore.
We can if you want.
No, it's been a really flat start by the Storm, and I think it's almost like a bit of imposter syndrome. What is this team that's running out and on this 6-game losing streak? We're not used to it, but I think there's been a build-up of obviously issues through the course of the preseason with the Eli Katoa situation, losing Ryan Pappenhausen, departing. Some quality players, which has tested our depth, and then obviously during the season, amid the losing streak, losing Tui Kamikamica to that stroke, which is a big shame, but thankfully he's on the mend and back hopefully soon. But yeah, it's been a bit of a rough trot to start season 2026.
Mate, I keep tipping them every single week thinking, surely not again, surely not again. What was the Rabbitohs streak? They'd never won in Melbourne, is that right?
First time in their history that they've won in Melbourne. We've just had a dominant record over Souths, and some big wins in previous Anzac Day fixtures. And yeah, South Sydney just turned it up, and we just sort of it just compounded for the Storm. And yeah, the scoreline I think reflects the performance that the Storm dished out, but also how the quality of this South Sydney side, which is they're having a very exciting season under Wayne Bennett.
Mate, this is just the thing that I cannot believe. 48-6 on Anzac Day, down at Amy Park, more than 25,000, packed out crowd there. You just don't hear about it. 2 more points and we would have written you guys off for the grand final, Harrison. No team's ever conceded 50.
We conceded 50 against Penrith, so we're conceding some really heavy scorelines in our losses. And I was looking at the stats. Storm has conceded second most tries in the competition. So a team that has prided itself on defence for decades, seeing them leak so many, arguably soft tries, particularly on the edges, is, really concerning stats. And I'm sure, Craig Bellamy has given his players a rocket because, he defence is his number one. He builds his team on defence.
It's just 48 down there in Melbourne on Anzac Day. Traditionally, it's been such a good clash. That was probably just the most shocking thing for me. Like you said, Wayne Bennett does have the Rabbitohs firing. We will talk a little bit about them. But just the way you have capitulated against, I know obviously Jarome Hughes is dealing with an injury in HIA now as well. But Cameron Munster, he's just been one guy. Obviously, as Queenslanders, we all know what he can do around Origin time. Geez, he's just been down on form. Harry Grant's been solid, but just not what you'd expect of these guys. Suafa'alongo taking over Ryan Pappenhausen. I think he's been a shining light. But I'm just really shocked to see how that spine, which we all know on its day is the best spine in the NRL, right? When you've got Munster, Hughes, and Grant in there, you chuck in a young guy like Fa'alongo, you've got a crazy spine. It's just not clicking at the moment. That's the part that I find crazy. Obviously, like you mentioned, the defence, or I did forget that Penrith game already conceded 50, so we have already written you off for the grand final, Harrison. I just wanted you to repeat that. So that's fine. I'm glad we can bring that back up again.
Yeah.
But just the losses, like you said, just going through the losses, like it's 48-6 now in round. 26-22 went down to the Raiders, conceded 38 again in Melbourne against the Wars back in round 6. Combank Stadium in round 5, like we just mentioned, Penrith putting 50. Then there's a 28-24 game. And then I thought my boys, the Broncos, back in round 3 when we weren't travelling too well to get that close win, 18-14. Looking back now, it doesn't even look like that good of a win. And that's, of course, after you guys started with two completely dominant performances to start the season, putting 52 on the Eels, 46 on the Dragons. Obviously, we know they're bottom of the table type team, so it was a bit of a false dawn at the beginning. But like you said, this defence, I mean, Craig Bellamy is going to go down as one of the all-time great coaches coming from that Wayne Bennett school. And, of course, it would have hurt just that little bit extra too, knowing that it was Wayne Bennett, the older apprentice and master. Bellamy does have a great record against him traditionally as well. But is the fire still burning in, Craig? Because I want you to tell me a little bit about it too. You're obviously the man on the ground in Melbourne. You're covering these press conferences. I hear you down at the pressers coaches, especially the post-match presser. Now, Wayne Bennett and Craig Bellamy both threw up some firecrackers here. Wayne Bennett had a nice little moment with you, mate. Didn't want to talk about origin selection, but you tell us about what happened down there post-game, Harrison.
Oh, it's a classic Wayne Bennett. I don't think he likes the journos that much. He was giving us absolute crickets in his responses, which I think is a shame because, your team that you support plays throughout the week and they've had this historic win down in Melbourne, stack of storylines, Latrell Mitchell having a blinder, Tallis Duncan, he's in the frame for Origin, which I asked Wayne Bennett about. Eventually he gave me some sort of response, but I think it gives a disservice to the fans, the Rabbitohs fans that want to hear from the coach after such a big win like that, to give sort of, pointed worded answers, to the questions. I think is sort of gives the fans a disservice that, in this digital age when we're, information hungry and fans want to know what the latest news is on their team. I think to have a press conference like that was poor form, but that's Wayne Bennett. Sometimes he opens up, sometimes he doesn't, and we got him on an off night.
He's a Queenslander, Harrison. You asked him, should Duncan be in the Origin selection? And he goes, mate, I'm a Queenslander. I have no opinion on it. So I messaged Harrison straight away. I said, mate, whenever you ask me a question, I'm going to say I've got no opinion on it, mate. I'm a bloody Queenslander.
He's got a Queensland name, though, Queensland attitude, talent.
He looks like a Queenslander, Tallis Duncan. We'll happily take him as well. Fair question from you. But I see it's interesting because I get to see Wayne Bennett at Maroubra during their weekly. And he's normally a bit like the circus master a little bit when he does those weekly ones the day before the games. He's normally in a pretty jovial mood with us. I've found him to be like that all throughout the year. I had a run-in with him a couple of weeks ago talking about were they too hard on coaches, and he just cackled and said, you want me to have a go at journos now? He's in a good mood normally, but I think you could just see after a big win like that, and maybe there was a bit of a connection with Craig Bellamy. I don't think he cared about rubbing it in, but I think he definitely cared about keeping his team in check, and that's what I probably got out of that. Is that what you were feeling a little bit? Like, I just think that he didn't want to give too much away. He didn't want to talk them up too much and big note them when it was such a big win, and South are going to start gaining some momentum now.
Yeah, I think he enjoys flying under the radar, Wayne Bennett and his South side, which I think at the moment they're kind of like the dark horse of this competition. I don't think many people expect them to win the premiership, but they are certainly playing some exciting footy and, building some great combinations, and their stars are really, clicking as well. And just on Tallis Duncan, such a fresh player still, but, stringing out an 80-minute performances so young in his career. So outstanding. And then obviously Alex Johnston just tearing our right side to shreds all night on Anzac Day was hard to see. But yeah, phenomenal team. And I think they're going to surprise a lot of people if they haven't done so already.
mate, shout out to Matt Duffy, who stepped up
Mm.
after a stint in the Super League. He'd been out of the NRL for going on 4 years. He made 327 metres in that game, which is just absolutely phenomenal. And I was just looking at the team stats just from that game, mate. South made 2,118 metres, all run metres. Melbourne made 1,332. That's
Yeah.
about 800 more metres. That's ridiculous. 14 line breaks to 1. Just really crazy. Just in about all these stats I'm going through now, it's just not what you'd expect from the Melbourne Storm, right? Like the way they've conceded those type of tackles. I mean, you guys had to make over 100 more tackles, missed about the same amount, errors made about 5 more. Nothing really crazy that stands out there. But that South pack just absolutely dominated you. We didn't touch on Craig Bellamy though. I just wanted to say I was line producing at Fox Sports News out there on Sunday morning, and the main headline we ran all morning was Craig Bellamy describing it as the most embarrassed I've ever been as a coach. And we went balls to the wall with that quote, and that's what we ran all morning. Tell us about his reaction, because we've had this Willy Woney for the last few years, right? It's like, will Craig Bellamy sign again? Will he extend in Melbourne? And every year for the last few years, he's come out and signed an extension, despite the fact that you feel like he was coming to an end. Describe just how he's feeling at the moment and what it was like being in the press conference with him.
I think, and look at his press conference. He could have done what Wayne Bennett did, an off night, and could have given us, the press, nothing. But he was really frank and direct and, at times scathing in his assessment. The most embarrassed he's ever been in his long career. He's seen a few games, and to have it on that sort of level of disappointment, I think is really, really telling. I think, yeah, during the week, as you mentioned, like they are in such a positive, like they're training really, with energy. It's always sort of a positive environment in the lead up to the game, but I think it's just falling apart in a couple of areas. I think the spine is trying too hard, almost in attack, like they're looking for always a scoring option and not sort of settling when they have a whole set of 6. I think there was one play where they, it was the first tackle, they got a set restart, and they kicked to go for a try, and I think that was a really poor option. So I think they're overplaying their hand when it comes to attacking opportunities. And I know Craig sort of doesn't think the new rule interpretations have played a part, but I really think they have. I think Storm has been like this defensive team that has like ultimate pros in slowing teams down, but when these new 6 again rule interpretations take effect, it's really caught the defense off guard, and they haven't been able to reset, and other teams are just finding ways through their defense, particularly on the edges with a little bit less experience. Definitely missing the likes of Xavier Coates on the edge. I think, his loss has been really particularly felt in the Storm side.
I know we just talked about that forward battle and meters, but Cam Munster, obviously, like I said before, Queensland legend for what he's been able to do. We know Origin is only a month away, game 1 in Sydney. Is it a shock thing to say? I mean, I know he's going to be there, but on form, he should not be playing for Queensland, right? Let's be completely honest. That's how I feel, and I'm a Queensland. I'm very proud, but if we were picking this team purely on form, you've got the likes of Tom Dearden, even Jake Clifford's been playing real well at the Cowboys. You've got Ezra Mam, who's looking better every week at the Broncos. Daly Cherry Evans is even looking good at the Roosters. It'd be a shot call to bring him back. But on form, he shouldn't be there, right? That's what I'm feeling right now. How do you feel about his selection chances for Queensland in game 1? I know he's going to be there, but on form, he really shouldn't be.
Yeah, he's out of form. He's missing a lot of tackles too. I was having a look at missed tackles, and he's sort of up there in terms of, missing, he's running out of the line almost too eager and just missing shots. And I think he's the ultimate competitor. So I think he gets, leads his Queensland side out, and maybe, the Origin series is an opportunity for him to sort of refresh mentally, hit a bit of form. He always seems to rise when it comes to playing for Queensland, and hopefully, that sort of form he does have in the Origin arena can sort of, stem down to when he comes back to the Storm and hopefully, get us out of this hole. I still think, you have to be a brave person to write off the Storm to miss finals. And I think there's still time for it to turn around. And Craig Bellamy, if there's anyone that can get the Storm out of this hole, I think it's a Craig Bellamy team. And I think Cameron Munster is going to be playing a vital part of that, and he really needs to sort of step up to get us out or get the Storm out of that hole.
And if there's anything then can play him back into it, you'd have to think playing for Queensland too will get him back into that space. I have no doubts that Cam will bounce back, but it just keeps bringing me back to form. On form, he just shouldn't be there right now, but he will be picked for Queensland. I'm sure he will do a job. Us proud Queenslanders, Harrison. We know when you put on that maroon jumper, you grow an extra leg. Or two. We know that for sure. Mate,
Absolutely.
on Bellamy then, there's a story that has broken about him stepping down from his senior advisory role with the New South Wales Blues. He was involved in that coaching staff last year, was heavily involved. They're saying it's not really connected, but you'd have to think that the way they've started the season certainly hasn't helped, and him wanting to be involved in that. Should we be reading too much into that? Like with Craig Bellamy, just even his future, like he signed a 2-year extension, didn't he? Was that the most recent contract he signed?
Yeah, two-year extension. I think it's a good move. I think he knows that his side's in a bit of trouble at the moment. They're down on troops. Lot of inexperience. Throwing Cooper Clark has been sort of a great inclusion in this side, but at the same time, he's not a back rower, and he needs sort of, to be thrown into the deep end so early in his rookie career is a big ask. So I think he recognises that they have, a bit of inexperience or in a bit of a trouble, and he's sort of taken a step back from his Blues commitments to help Laurie to sort of steer and hopefully reinvent the game plan or shake it up a little bit so they have some success and can start winning games.
It's going to be interesting, man, because now, I mean, like I said, I've been tipping them every week thinking this is the bounce back week. They can't lose 6 in a row, but that is the case of how they're going at the moment. You guys haven't been on a run like this. 6 straight losses, only the second time in club history, the first time since 2002. Now, you mentioned the finals just before, mate, gone through the records. Now, of course, there was that 2010 season where you were stripped of points. But the last time you did miss the finals was also back in 2002. So we're talking about a pretty crazy stretch of finals. I know the Broncos used to be a similar team. Melbourne sort of took that consistency mantle and have been the most consistent NRL team of the last 2 decades, really. And you'd have to think what goes up, mate, has to eventually come down. You seem to be pretty confident. And we have to put the disclaimer that the Penrith Panthers were last. When was that? About beginning or just after the first Origin game last year. And we saw them a game away from the grand final, almost pipped the Broncos in the prelim. So we can see what they do, but that's a Penrith team that's won, 4 grand finals in a row. That's a very different story as well. Are you confident, mate, that Melbourne Storm can sneak back into this top 8?
Yeah, I look at 2 other examples too. Look at the Broncos in their premiership year last year. They had a bit of a rough patch, and they turned that around and went on to win the premiership. And I think you even take a look at the Broncos this year, how many players they have out and injured. I think they had 13
in that Bulldogs
13
game.
players,
Crazy,
and they
crazy.
beat the Bulldogs, who are one of the sort of heavyweights or considered one of the heavyweights of the competition. So I think the good thing in the Storm's favour, it's still early in the year, relatively early in the season, less than 10 rounds in. I think, we still have that superstar spine. I think with that spine and hopefully getting Tui comes back in a few weeks, I think maybe a couple of fresh faces. I know Hugo Peel, an exciting back, usually plays fullback, but I think he can play wing or centre. He's a local Victorian junior too, and he's sort of biding his time, and maybe he even gets a shot this coming weekend against the Dolphins. So I think maybe Craig, opts to wield the axe, mind a few players that their positions aren't guaranteed, and actually backs up what he says, that there could be changes. I think they're lacking a bit of depth to make wholesale changes, but maybe bring a Hugo Peel onto the wing and shake things up and see how he goes. I think once they get that first win, maybe against the Dolphins, it could it could change the momentum their way and maybe pick up a few games. I think they can still make the 8, but I think time is running out and they need to get a move on.
Was going to say, yeah, you've got the Dolphins coming up, Friday night footy, Melbourne with the Tigers in form, get the Eels again, the Bulldogs, the Roosters, the Knights into the round 15 bye. So, I mean, the way that the evenness of the competition is, you don't even see there's really any easy wins. You just don't know what's going to happen this season. I did just want to have a look at some betting odds, gamble responsibly, of course. $34 to win the premiership this year, which is unheard of for Melbourne. Now, you're very confident they're going to make the 8. That's about a $2.60 bet, so pretty
Yeah.
juicy odds if you want to hop on there. Dragons are the only team you'd really think you can really ride out of that top 8 picture at the moment. Obviously, you got the Eels also struggling a little bit, but they've shown on their day they can do it. I mean, it's just it's a wide even comp at the moment. You're looking at the ladder. You've got Penrith on 14 points, out and out, deserved premiership favourites. Then you've got 4 teams on 12 points. Then you've got 3 teams on 10 points to round out the top 8. And then you've got 8s and 6s, and the Dragons on 0, and you guys on 4. So you really think right now the top 16 teams can all still make the top 8. It's that type of competition, and Penrith are the clear favourites, and Dragons, if you take those 2 teams away, you've got a pretty even comp up the middle. I'm
Yeah.
not writing Melbourne off either, mate. I know what they can do. I probably will keep tipping them over the next couple of weeks, hoping that surely it can't be 7 in a row, right?
Yeah. Oh, I don't think so. You know, seven's a good luck number, isn't it? They can turn it around, but yeah, I think it's not till after the State of Origin period that we start seeing the contenders from the pretenders, and I think the Storm can come good. I think, hopefully welcome a few players back and will give us a bit of depth. And, I think it comes down to the spine at the end of the day. I think if they can fire and, sort of adapt to these rule changes, their defense can sort of adapt to the rule changes. The forwards, giving away less 6 agains, I think they'll come good. It'll turn in their favour, hopefully.
It's going to be very interesting, mate. Obviously, we saw Broncos Storm grand final last year, so we know what they can do. They were on top in that game for a large chunk of it too. But good luck to the Melbourne, Harrison. We're going to wait and see. It's going to be very juicy. Of course, my Broncos, you did touch on them earlier, chucking on a 20-0 first half against the Bulldogs.
Oh.
That was a massive performance in round 8. That one shocked me. Like you said, they're missing 13 players. They had Jesse Arthurs named at fullback. They got Hayes Perham, a bit of a journeyman, who had to step into that number 1. I will say, when you look at it's mostly in the forward pack. When you actually take a deeper look at their team, all the outside backs are pretty much the same. They've got their starting choice halves in Ezra and Reynolds. Obviously, Ben Hunt's injured, but we've had the luxury of playing him off the bench this year. Corey Pakes is their chosen number 9. He's had that jersey lockdown. And Xavier Willison, man, he's the one I wanted to just shout out the most. The absolute beast. Starting at lock, doing a job without Payne Haas. I know it was very sad to lose Payne Haas, but Xavier Willison is just a ready-made replacement. I know they have made a signing to replace him, but geez, you've got Willison. For those who haven't watched him too closely, mate, he's having a breakout season. You could argue he's had probably a couple breakout seasons, but starting in lock, he was absolutely incredible, mate. Even barged over for their final try. I just wanted to get up his stats. He's been absolutely crazy. He got the most fantasy points, Harrison, I can tell you that, of the game, so that was always good. He made 170 metres. Absolutely destructive. He made a line break, like I said, in that try, and just doing everything really up the middle, 33 tackles as well. So he was just crucial to what they had to do. Obviously, Adam Reynolds, like a fine wine, he's pulling the strings at the moment when he's not injured. Great crowd up there in Brisbane.
Yeah, it comes down to culture too, like how those articles, that early season pressure on Michael Maguire just seems like a distant memory now. He has this side drilled, they're competing for each other. There's a will to win in that Broncos side, and they are, exceeding expectations with all the injuries that they have, and to still beat a full strength Bulldogs team with Stephen Crichton back on Friday was phenomenal, and you can tell they are really a hungry team, and they want to that back-to-back premiership is well within their sights now.
Oh, that must hurt, Harrison, because I have brought it up on a previous podcast, but there was a few periods just after university where you religiously tagged me in that ladder on Facebook every Monday morning. Tag a mate whose team is lower than you. You did it for about a decade straight,
Yeah,
mate, and it's going to
had
be
a good
so
run.
sweet because you had a very good run, and I'm such a nice guy. I don't do it back to you, but I don't think we're going to be doing that anytime soon, mate. It's going to be a while now before Melbourne. And you know what? I think the
No.
overwhelming consensus, sorry to rub it in, is that people do want to see a little bit of a fall finally from Melbourne after so much success. I'm not saying I want that personally, mate, but I think that's a feeling out there with NRL fans. Obviously, not too much. You don't want to see them down too much, but if they just happen to miss the finals this year, I don't think that's going to upset too many people. Harrison, I don't think I had this last time. We do have a new segment here on season ticket holders because we are for the fans here, mate. Good or bad for fans? And before I get into it, I do want to thank our sponsor, National Freight Management. Shout out to them, the team with Gerard and the team. They've done a great job. They specialize in domestic freight from cartons through to pallets nationwide. You can find more information on our website or check them out at nationalfreightmanagement.com.au. Now, Harrison, good or bad for fans? Big news out of that Anzac round. We saw some awesome footy. And, even the result with the Dragons Roosters game, even though it was a one-sided shellacking, it was still awesome to see the way that the NRL supports Anzac Day. Now, it was the highest attended round in NRL history. Round 8 of this season, officially the highest attended round, 220,018 people. Works out to an average of about 27,500. That was across the 6 cities in the 3 states and 2 countries. That record surpassed round 7 from last year, which was 218,000, about 2,000 more. And that was also when they had that massive Easter Good Friday clash between the Bulldogs and Rabbitohs. Mate, exploding NRL crowds, good or bad for fans?
Oh, wonderful. Anzac Day and Anzac round was it was such a great spectacle. All the games, packed crowds. Newcastle yesterday was phenomenal. Brookvale Oval was great too. Even on Saturday at the Storm, it was such a special moment. They black out the whole stadium. There's the minute silence. They got the fireworks. They commemorate the occasion so well, and the NRL ought to be applauded the way it puts on such a great spectacle, and the teams really give it their all during the whole round. It's fantastic.
Awesome, man. I'm a big crowd nerd, mate. And to see the way the crowds have gone up and up
Mm,
this year, they had a really good year last year, but just about every team, I think, I was having a look before, and averages is going up. And I think they were just one away from selling out every game this last round as well. So it's really cool to see the
absolutely.
excitement and enthusiasm with the footy at the moment, mate. Rugby
Partic-
league.
p- Particularly in this, sort of economy where things are expensive, fans, if there's a big game, big blockbuster on, fans still have that desire to go and support their team. And, the more fans that get out there to the stadium and cheer on their team, win or lose, it's a great thing.
And that leads me into another good or bad for fans, but this is the Dragons. Now, obviously, a massive week. Shane Flanagan sacked after a record losing streak there with St. George Illawarra. We've seen Dean Young come in. Michael Ennis was shown the door, but it was the same old story. I'm sure Dragons fans were hoping that after watching Kieran Foran come in and replace Seibold and go on the run that he's done with Manly, they were all thinking, here we go, 62-16 against the Roosters on Anzac Day. Beautiful spectacle. I just want to touch on. There was like a serviceman with tears in his eyes. Just watching the emotions that game brings out. The NRL does it just about better than anyone. But on the field, people always say this is a game where you throw form out the window. But the last couple of years, that just hasn't been the case because the Dragons have been that shit. It's just not the case. They can't overcome it. Obviously, they dropped Kyle Flanagan. They brought in the young Cade Reid. The coach has said he will stay in. He didn't get much of a chance to put himself into that game. But an 0-8 start to the season, mate, good or bad for fans?
Oh, terrible. I think the whole board needs to be removed. The years of, rot at the Dragons, everything from, letting some superstars go, and unable to retain other stars like Zach Lomax. It's just they're a club in tatters, I think, and getting 60 put on them just adds more pressure. It's not on the coach, it's not on the interim coach. The players are trying, but there's just no organisation in that club as well, and it's showing on the field, unfortunately for Dragons supporters.
Mate, terrible. And, such a proud club with a storied history
Mm.
and what they've done. And they finally dropped Kyle Flanagan, and then I saw a Daily Telegraph article saying you got to put him back in. That's how bad they are. Everyone's
Oh,
calling for his head, and then it's like,
and
oh no, hang on, put him back in again. I do feel for Kyle as well in this whole situation because he's been dragged through the mud, and I don't think as a half we know all about confidence and the way he's coming in and out again. I just don't know. Some good news for fans for them though. Did confirm that Scotty Drinkwater would be coming on a 3-year deal. I think around 900,000 a season. That can't come quick enough. That joins Keon Kaloamatangi and then Phillips Army as well. Queenslander, I see he is also going to the club. So it looks like they've got some things in place at least, but I think it's going to be a very tough Dragons season for Dragons fans out there. And geez, if they don't do the wooden spoon, I don't know, miracle.
It's going to be a long rebuild, I think.
A long, long rebuild. Now, the big story, of course, Harrison, last 48 hours too, Jarome Luai spotted jetting off to Papua New Guinea, potential inaugural marquee signing. Now, the way that the Tigers have ridiculously done his deal is that he has a player option every year, and I believe I saw a deadline that was this week on a Thursday to see if he'd be locked in for the year after. Now, of course, PNG doesn't come into 2028. We've got the Perth Bears coming in next year. Now, it looks like he's on about 1.2 million a year. And obviously, I did a big rant last week on the podcast about people probably not really realizing how big of an impact PNG is going to have because it's going to be tax-free dollars. So $1.2 million here and $1.2 million there, very different. You're going to get taxed about $600,000 here. You stay here, you go over there, you're getting double your money. You're getting double your salary. And I think Jarome Luai is not a silly man. I think he's about 28, 29 now, going over there. It looks like he could be the marquee signing, mate. Is that good or bad for fans?
I'm divided on this one, to be honest. Well, one, I don't know why he's going to PNG. I don't think PNG don't enter the comp until, as you say, 2028. So that means they can't negotiate till much later. I'm not sure why they're sort of able to sort of entice players now. And
dodgy NRL, mate.
Yeah, if you're an NRL club with the current salary cap restrictions and, finding out, like, how do you compete with that sort of dollar if they're getting tax-free incentives when the rest of the competition, even Perth Bears, has to play by the current salary cap rules? It just seems like one team is being benefited, and I understand, it's going to take a lot to build this PNG Chiefs team up, but yeah, I don't know. If I was a Tigers fan, I'd be a bit filthy considering he's currently contracted to the Tigers and not able to sort of negotiate. That period hasn't become available yet. So yeah, not sure. I don't think it's a good look.
Yeah, you do raise a fair point. I mean, I read the story, which is basically along the lines of they informed the club over the weekend he'd be over there, and then I believe he's getting back to Sydney tonight or today. I'm talking about Monday. This will come out, this episode, on Tuesday morning. You're right about the whole rules about how it works. I mean, obviously the NRL is doing everything in their power, as is the Australian government, to try and make this team a success. And we all know that could mean the potential of bending some rules or some grey areas, Harrison. I'm sure there's something along those lines because they know there's a lot riding on this, and the $600 million the Australian government's putting into this team. They've basically, the thing that I don't like, if I'm going on my rant now, is that the Perth has had no help and they've got to go to a foreign market and they've got to get the same salary, the same help as every other team in the NRL. The NRL is going to give them the same amount of money. You're a bit of an AFL man as well. You know how it works over there. They work it out with draft spots and the like, right? They work out ways for teams coming in off fresh to get a leg up. We're going to see that with Tasmania when they come in to the AFL. But when it comes to the NRL, they're just like, well, here you go. You're going to get the same as everyone else. It works with the Dolphins because Brisbane was crying out for a second team. They had the Redcliffe history to fall back on. But you've got a Perth Bears team that's got to go over to a foreign city as far as rugby league goes. That, of course, they've got the North Sydney Bears connection, but that's going to mean fuck all, really, in Perth because it's not North Sydney. It might help with a few members and that type of thing, but they've still got to go and play the majority of their games in a city that has no connection to a team that has no real history in the city. And then you get to PNG and you've got all this money being pumped in by the Australian government. And then it looks like you're going to have a guy like Jarome Luai. I haven't seen anything about him getting in trouble. It's like he can go over there and speak all he likes. To be fair, he has that player option, so maybe that changes the technicalities of it and that type of thing. But you're right, it is unfair because I look at a Perth roster right now and I'm like, geez, you're lacking like a big star. Where's the help that they're getting when they're going to struggle in their first season, right? I mean, is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. They start preseason trading in November and they still haven't signed a big fish yet.
They don't have a hooker.
No, they got a few reliable signings, but yeah, they really need to land a knockout blow. And I think it's particularly important that Perth from the get-go is a competitive team, a team that, arguably is in finals in their first year. Otherwise, they're not going to cut through the AFL market. Yeah, they're going to get good crowds, but if they don't have a great start and it's rocky for, 1 or 2 years, a market that you're trying to buy into is not going to come on board with that. So I think, Perth Bears really need a couple of key signings to be competitive from the get-go to sort of get Perth fans on board this Bears outfit.
That's right, mate, and that's the part that riled me up a little bit because it's like you looked at the last example we have is the Melbourne Storm, right? That's the last time the NRL tried to expand into a really foreign market, an AFL-dominated market, and Melbourne Storm were lucky in the fact that they were a successful franchise. It obviously had people in the right positions, but they won a grand final very quickly into their inception, and then they were very lucky to get the like of a Craig Bellamy, one of the greatest coaches we've ever seen, just happened to create this dynasty that's never really looked back. We just mentioned their finals record before, but not every team is going to be like that. That's a real rarity. And look at even the Dolphins; they're still yet to make the finals.
And I think as well, like the fact that the Bears are struggling to get players. We have PNG Chiefs coming in 2028, 2 new teams. Is there enough talent? Is the talent pool big enough, to sustain that many teams too soon? Like I think. It seems like the Bears are struggling and, there's depth. Even the Storm have depth issues at the moment. A few other teams do. And, the question has to be asked, is there, enough depth to sustain 2 new franchises?
It's going to be very interesting, mate. A fiery good or bad for fans, Harrison. I loved it, mate. Give it to me. Put it in my veins, son. Let's go. Harrison, mate, I think we've broken it down pretty well. I wish your Melbourne Storm all the luck this year. I don't want to see... Yeah, they will need it, mate. And jump on that $2.60 because I reckon that's still juicy odds. I'm not writing them off.
Value.
Mate, and the way the competition is, the speed of the game, the 6 agains we've seen, the incredible score lines we've seen, you think that once Melbourne Storm gets ahead of the ball, right, they still have a few injuries, guys to come back. Obviously, you said before, Eli Katoa was a big blow preseason, but I do think they're going to be up there. They've got to get into the 8. I'd be shocked to see if they still miss it. But if they were going to miss it, it'd be a crazy season like this one where every team is shown on their day. Unless you're the Dragons, you can beat any team on your day. So,
well, as the saying goes, when it rains, it pours, and we just need that one win to make it pour. And obviously biased perspective, but I think a Craig Bellamy coach team with the spine that they have, you'd be brave to write them off out of finals.
You're right, Harrison. And Melbourne does have pretty shitty weather. So there you go. We'll wait and see. Harrison Priebe, ARN, does a great job. Award-winning radio journalist, everyone. And my former classmate there at UQ does a great job. You can hear his dulcet tones all around Australia, I reckon, mate. Hear the headlines. Harrison, thanks again so much for joining us on Season Ticket Holders.
Thanks for having me. Good to be back.
Thanks a lot, Harrison. And thank you, everyone. Please give us a like, guys. Jump on Apple, Spotify. Give us a follow. Give us a 5-star rating if you like what we do. And if you don't, who cares? Don't listen. No, we thank you and really enjoy all your support, guys. It's really big help. As always, take care. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.